Hi, it's Dave from Telescribe and Nothing Gained, and with me today is, of course, Andy from, I was about to say Destruction, but Andy from Nomadic Rain
I
and
wish.
Kirk from Screen Blast Repeat, and you are watching the A.D.K Rock and Metal channel. Okay, on today's video, we are doing another one of our reviews where we do a retrospective look back at an album that may be influential or maybe a genre-defining album, etc. So today was Andy's pick. Andy asked us to check out the band Destruction and the 1985 debut album Infernal Overkill. I'm going to hand over to Kurt to give us a little bit of a background on this album.
Infernal Overkill is the legendary debut album from the German thrashers Destruction, released in May 1985 via Steamhammer Records. As a reference point, it came out in the same year as classics from Celtic Frost, Slayer, Anthrax, and Possessed. Cited as an influential record by the likes of Rob Flynn, Watain, and many artists from the Norwegian black metal scene, Infernal Overkill also secured a place in the top 100 albums of the 1980s in UK extreme metal magazine Terrorizer in a 2001 feature. Today, it's famous for its raw production and thrash metal spirit, but it also had an impact on the first wave of death metal. Ultimately, together with Sodom, Creator, and Tankard, the boys in Destruction helped to define the Teutonic Big Four of thrash metal, and they're still going strong with 7 albums released since 2010, including 2025's latest effort, Birth of Malice.
Okay, so that's a bit of background. Kirk, do you want to kick us off and run us through some of the topics that we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, we'll leave Andy last on this first round because we know this is his pick and it's one of his favourite albums. So, Dave, let's start with 2 of your favourite songs from this 8-track album. What did you go for?
I've got a question for Andy before I get to that. So I want to know, before I start talking about this album, and why was the reason you picked this album, Andy?
Okay. In 1985, I was 12, maybe coming on 13. Been into metal for a couple of years, and this band just absolutely blew me away. The track that Bestial Invasion I heard on a compilation album called Speed Kills. I don't think I ever owned it, but I certainly borrowed it from a friend or taped a copy. I had others in this series, but not this particular album. It had, I think Possessed were on there and Slayer, so it was a real gateway into the thrash scene that was emerging in the early 80s or mid 80s. So absolutely drawn to that track. Bestial Invasion absolutely blew me away. The speed, the ferocity, the guitar playing was just nothing else I'd heard before. So I sought out the album, Shades in London, one of my rare trips on the train with a friend to visit this underground record shop. I don't even know where it is, but we managed to find it. This is before the days of Google Maps, but we found it, and I spent probably far too much money. Came over a load of great albums, including this one. And it just stands up today as one of my favourite albums of all time. They've never, in my opinion, come anywhere near matching it. You know, the band Destruction is still plugging away now, 40 plus years later, or 40 years later. And yeah, I mean, they were one of the, off camera cut, you said one of the top big 4 Teutonic thrash. I think Tankard are the other one you're including.
Yeah, Sodom, Creator, and Tankard are the 3.
So from Destruction and Sodom and early Creator as well, I was really into the German thrash scene, and this is just the jewel in the crown, in my opinion, from that era. And one of my all-time favourites.
Now you know the background. Can you even pick 2 songs? I don't know if you like this album or not.
No, I didn't, in all honesty. So, and this is the challenge I had with this album. So I can give you a lot more insight into my thoughts about this album on other questions. So when we talk about production, when we talk about highs and lows, I can talk a lot more about that. There was very little as far as songs in here that I would listen to again. Just generally, there wasn't. Probably Thrash Attack. just because nice intro, and it's actually got a bit of a groove structure to it. Nice lead guitar melody, and I wrote, it sounds like a band doing a bit of a warm up. It sounds like just like we're going to get our fingers warmed up before we play a show, which is what I quite liked about that kind of song. Bestial Invasion. It's not like I liked the track, so I didn't like the track. There was nothing about the track. However, I'm kind of going on to my highs and lows. So actually, I'm going to leave it, and I want to talk about until I get to my highs and lows, because there's a lot more I'm going to talk about in that when we get to that section. So, because I'm more inclined about what you thought about top tracks then.
Yeah, okay. Before I hand over to Andy, I suspect one of them we're going to share. So, track number 3, The Ritual. Guitar tone nice and thick and crunchy enough to register the gallop and slash of the plectrum in fast picking conditions. For 1985, I think the audio engineering is really strong actually on the guitar. Most early thrash bands do struggle with the audio, don't they, around this time, notably Voivod and Sodom, and the production here, though raw, is better than those two. And the drummer actually displays the first sign of a half-timing approach to the Scorched Earth riffing here, so I'm surprised you didn't pick up on that, Dave. Would Metallica be proud of this song? Absolutely. And it wouldn't be out of place on Ride the Lightning. Schmier, who's the bassist and vocalist, gives us an idea of what a gory extreme metal voice might sound like in the future. And the question I get from this song is, how did Max Cavalier and Schmier end up in the same vocal range in 1985? I assume they're trading tapes. You would say that Destruction are far more advanced than Sepultura just because of geography. Got a more developed music industry in Europe, and a band coming out of Brazil in 1985. It's going to be very difficult, but I assume they were aware of each other. And then, yeah, Andy, I agree, Bestial Invasion. One of the shorter tracks on the album, 4 minutes and 36. And when I listen back to this now, how often do we cite Megadeth as the primary influence on technical thrash, when you've got songs like Bestial Invasion by Destruction that are just as enthralling? The rapid hammer-on pull-off techniques in between the fast alt-picking must be a nightmare to play live if you're not 100% on your game. And they understand why this would stand out for you on that Speed Kills compilation. Unlike Megadeth, Destruction see no weakness in repetition, do they? They seldom change into non-repeating parts, which Dave Mustaine and co like to do. What I like about this, they've stripped out the rock and roll elements of metal that Venom have still got, who are clearly the biggest influence, and they've replaced them with the darkest power chords and menacing open string rhythms. So, Andy, The Ritual, Bestial Invasion, were any of these in your top 2?
Before I sort of move on to that question, you'll be surprised to know that there will be quite a lot of negativity from me regarding elements of this album as we go through the discussion. But like I said at the outset, one of my all-time favourites, and it holds a very special place for me. But top track for me, Bestial Invasion. That was my gateway to the band. I mean, it's absolutely blistering. It's 200 beats per minute according to the tab I dared to have a look. Yeah, blistering pace, 200 beats per minute. There's pull on and hammer off techniques, as you said, Kirk, in that second riff particularly. And then I just remember air guitaring to this when I was a teenager, or trying to imagine what Mike Silveringer is doing. I mean, he's absolutely incredible. So that was my favourite. It's quite. I mean, one of the negative things I'm going to say about the album is the indecisive lyrics. I mean, it's a gold mine of misheard lyrics. And when I was listening to this as a youngster, I was trying to work it out, and there's the satanic imagery and themes. So you think, well, that must be what he's singing there, and then you read it and you think, no, it can't be. That is just so not what he's singing there. But we'll come on to that later. So, Bestial Invasion, definitely my favourite. Out of the remaining 7. It's really hard because I love them all. I mean, I can dismiss Thrash Attack, Dave, because it is an instrumental, and as you described, it sounds like a warm-up jam for rehearsal or show. So to me, that's a bit of a filler. Tormentor is an older tracks. Tormentor's probably one of the weaker ones that I wouldn't put as one of my favourites. It's one from the demo days. It's a bit repetitive, and the lyrics are really, really bizarre. Nothing to do with what you think the title Tormentor would be about. So out of the remaining 5, I can't pick my second best song. That I think they're that good.
Okay, so I think at this point, before we go to Dave, then what are the high points of this album for you then, Andy? We know that it's like a life-changing album, really, isn't it? Got you into thrash metal, and it sounds like you prefer the Teutonic thrash metal to the Bay Area thrash metal of Metallica and co. So what are the high points of this album for you?
I think, as I mentioned before, the incredible guitar playing. I mean, the songs themselves, they've got a pretty standard structure, but the riffs, they're not standard power chords. They're, lightning fast, single note lead techniques. I don't know. It's again like nothing I'd heard before. Going up to that point with AC/DC, Iron Maiden, sort of Metallica as well. I mean, they playing wise not standard of riffing. I mean, I'd heard a bit of Creator and Sodom at this stage as well. Their early releases. And they had the same sort of youthful exuberance and naivety and sort of low quality of recording and sort of, not a poor grasp of English, but a limited grasp of English in the way that's interpreted. But Destruction seemed to be head and shoulders above those two bands in the early releases. And just the sort of nostalgia element of it as well. I bought the vinyl, wish I still had it. I've stupidly sold most of my vinyls, but I just love the imagery of the band, the spikes, the bullet belts, the big curly hair, which is what I had back in the day as well. The cover, don't like the logo. I thought that logo is pretty poor compared to others that were, bands that were around at the time. But yeah, it's just hard for me to put the high points, but I think I've covered some of them.
Yeah, I'll give Dave. I don't think you've got many, so I'll give you my high points. The guitar tone, crunchy, powerful, with a layer of fuzz, far better than Megadeth's scratchy guitar tone around this time, I would say. I like the pumping energy, gleeful malevolence of this record. It still sounds fresh today in that regard. Like Venom. Venom were famous in 1980 for being the most evil sounding band on the planet. Destruction certainly are drawn from that. And I'd also say, for you, Andy, I'm going to make a guess. You can see and hear how it differs from what's coming out of America, and that should have been obvious in 1985 as well. So looking back from 2025, 40 years later, that excites me as well. I'm going to give you my weaknesses, then hand over to Dave. 5 of the 8 tracks on this album come in over 5 minutes. Not necessary, considering the speed and lack of dynamic variation. And I know that it's a famous song, Bestial Devastation, but the album lacks an era-defining song like Hell Awaits by Slayer, Gung Ho by Anthrax, or Circle of the Tyrants by Celtic Frost. So
Kirk, you just made the classic mistake that I've made once before when I was commenting on a Destruction post. Bestial Devastation is a...
That's the second clue, damn it, yes.
I've done exactly the same thing.
Sorry, what's it called? Bestial...
Invasion, this one.
Bestial Invasion, that's it, damn it. I knew I would do that. Yeah, sorry. Bestial Invasion. Dave, any high points, but if not, give us the low points of this album.
Okay, so the high points of this is, from a technical point of view, this band is very good. The actual album is musically actually very good. The riffs are very good, drum playing is very good. The low points is the absolutely abysmal production that is on this album. It is awful. When I first listened to it on the production, I was like, I can't do this again. I actually thought it is, when I got the tracks and I put them on there on MP3 and I played them and I went, this can't be the album that Andy's going on about. This has got to be some like garage band that's doing a home demo or something. This can't be the band that he's this big band. Then we looked into it and I was like, no, this is the big band. So I then sort of started thinking about going, this is awful. Then I had to kind of listen to it a few more times. And I had to put myself in the place of 1985. Because obviously this is an album of its time. We talked about this last week when we did our Black Sabbath album review and with Sabotage. And we talked about how that album, when you thought about what other bands were doing at the same time, and no one was doing what Sabbath was doing on Sabotage, and that's why it was such an important album. So I had to think about what was going on here. So it's 1985. You've got Megadeth's "Killing Is My Business" and "Business Is Good" came out the same year. Production on that is better overall, I would say. You also got to remember, Ride the Lightning was already out from Metallica, so and that's a phenomenally better production overall. And if they'd had the production of Ride the Lightning on this album, I'd have probably been really into it. But I mean, I wrote some notes about some of the stuff on here, which is like on Antichrist, horrible drum sound straight off from the off, and it sounds like early Sepultura riff, which, if you think about it, is actually Sepultura was probably after this, so or around that same time. When I'm thinking about the type of Sepultura riff I'm thinking, would have been after this period of time, probably 87 era.
Schizophrenia, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm getting that, but it was also like mixed with a bit of like the Samael kind of vibes in there, some real sort of darkness in there, and it was actually a good catchy riff in there. And actually, one of the things I have wrote as a positive, the vocals are actually accessible within the genre. You can actually, I mean, you said about ineligible at some point, you get the lyrics wrong, but you can actually look at it and go, do you know what, he's not off-putting. Sometimes you get the vocalists a little bit like grating on you, but I didn't find that at any point. And I've kind of written, it sometimes sounds sloppy, but not through their playing, but because of the production. You listen to it and you're like, the notes, you're hearing these riffs going off and you're like, it sounds really sloppy what they're playing, but then you listen to it going, no, it's actually technically straight on. But because the drums are so highly tightened, it's all very clicky on the drums. Tormentor's the best example of that. On that drum intro, it sounds like someone getting bubble wrap and just twisting it into a microphone. That's what the drums sounded like to me. And of course, I have to talk about Invisible Force with the poor man's Tom Araya scream at the start.
Although he did it a year before Angel of Death.
I know, but it was awful scream if you compare it to Tom. So there are elements in here. I just think this is one of those times when you listen to an album and go, if this had just had the right production on it, this would be an album I could get into. We did a video review for a band a while back, and I said exactly the same thing, where it was like, where's all the guitars gone in the mix and stuff like that, and we were listening to it and I'm like, if this had the right production, I would probably be really into this music, but the production on its own just absolutely throws me off. If we weren't reviewing this album, there was no way I'd have even got through one song.
So do you know, let's use that then, getting through one song, the opening song, Invisible Force. What did you note down for that? I know you don't like the drum sound, because we're going to move on to what we think of the opening track.
I think because I listened to it in a different order. So it was alphabetical, because that's how it downloaded for me. So I got, by this point this was my fifth song, and my notes literally just was poor man's Tom Araya scream at the start, wrote nothing more on it, because at this point my final comment at the end was, the album is just feeling very samey. I can't differentiate any of the tracks really, because it's all now just feeling like blast, thrash, speed. And I had lots of references like Raven, Megadeth, Death, even Sepultura. But if I was to take this album and you were to go Megadeth and like Raven's Life's a Bitch, or Megadeth's Killing Is My Business, or stuff like that, I'd be like, there's nothing to drag me over to destruction versus these bands. It's like they've become, look, on this particular album, I don't know about anything, just purely from a production point of view, not from the songwriting. It sounds like the Timu version of metal. It's like Timu thrash versus like Megadeth sort of things. But I have to also put myself in the mindset of a 1985 where there wasn't many other bands doing this at the time.
Yeah.
So they're spearheading, they're doing something different. And so that's why I was really interested if Andy had got into this in like 1995 and come across the album, I would have been really surprised if because I wonder if Andy had in 2000, let's say, came across this album, would Andy have had the same reaction to this? versus in 1985 when it's fresh and you haven't got all that experience of hindsight, when you haven't had all these great albums that have come later on, would you feel it's still like the Sepultura when people had like the Bestial Devastation album at the beginning? People love that who were there at the time. People like me that got into them around Arise and Chaos AD go, what the fuck is this at the beginning? Because it doesn't match what you kind of used to. So I think it's something to do with your journey. It has you in rose coloured glasses, is what they say, of how you feel about it. It's the emotion connection you have with it. With me, I've got no emotional connection to it, so straight away all I hear is the other bands that were doing things in different eras, but the production of their album was better. But I also think in mid-80s, a lot of recording studios didn't know how to record metal bands.
Exactly.
And that's a huge thing. They knew how to do pop bands, they knew how to do rock bands, which was all very clean and tinny. So when you got all these real fast, heavy stuff, they haven't got a clue. They were trying to record them the same way they did Beatles and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, Andy, what's it like when you buy this on vinyl and you hear track number 1, Invincible Force? Do you want to describe, even now, the impact that song has on you?
You should pay that for me, Kirk, because I don't know where the problem is, whether it's mine or yours, but...
Yeah, sure. I'm just thinking, track number 1, Invincible Force, 2 things, really. Can you remember your reaction to it when you first spun the vinyl? And also, what do you think of it today as the opening track on the album?
As I say, it's one of my favourites. I can't distinguish it from many of the others because it is good. But I agree with you completely, Dave. Schmear's vocals are decent, but he can't do the screams, the roars. I mean, that is evident on later albums, and I think that was a key factor as to why the band outed him after the release from Agony album. A couple of albums along. But he is now back in the band, but that element of his performance, I think, has always been poor. It sounds to me, whenever you hear the scream, that it's been manipulated in the studio, layered parts to make it sound reasonably decent, but it doesn't even come across particularly well. Not really to say. I mean, it's a good track to open the album with. You say about the production as well throughout, Dave. You think this is bad, and I think it's pretty good, but then the element that I listen to music for, or can distinguish between, you guys sort of listen to it and break it down a little bit more. So Invincible Force is a good opening track, probably not a good one to have that sort of initial so-called menacing scream from the lead vocalist, which I think is poor and is a very sort of, it's not his strong point at all when it comes to vocal deliveries.
Yeah, let me pick up on that then. So first of all, production-wise, this album gets a boost in the early 90s because of the rise of Norwegian black metal, and they love music like Hellhammer, early Creator, Sodom, and of course Destruction. I remember watching an interview, it was Rob Flynn interviewing the guy from Watain, and he was saying, how did you get into metal? And it was the Black Album. And then he had a girlfriend at the time, and he was listening to Slayer, and she said, no, forget about Slayer, listen to Destruction. That's like a filthier version of Slayer. And that's a good description. So this is a legendary band, and a lot of it is down to black metal and them being cited as an influence on that. I do like the hectic start to this song, going round the drum kit in pursuit of the sliding power chords. Yeah, I don't know if it inspired Tom Araya, but all 3 of us are just thinking of Angel of Death, and that's like 25 seconds, isn't it, that scream? On first listen, the drums did seem a millisecond out of time. Then subsequent listens, I never noticed it. Because you could almost say, if that's the case, it's like they've unintentionally been playing polyrhythms. But I didn't actually notice anything being out of time on the second listen. The fast alt-picking technique of Metallica is the main feature here, isn't it? Venom are the main influence, I would say, on Invincible Force. The lyrics are amusing. Don't try to escape or resist, because Christ won't help you tonight. Definitely contributed to the cliches and lore of early underground extreme metal, and the chaotic guitar solo was quite advanced as well in its technique for its time. So I think there's a lot to like here. Let's just quickly move on to the last track, Black Death. Bit different for you, Dave, because you had it in alphabetical order. I'll start 7 minutes 39 seconds. By this time I'm thinking, how can they sustain my attention with a song that's over 7 minutes if they stay in the same lane? Mike Ziffringer, the guitar player, squeezes as many fills and tags into his riffs as possible, creates that ferocious mentality in the artist and listener alike. Schmear's voice could have done with double tracking here. He's often just fucking talking and snarling. There's not really much oomph behind his voice by this stage. And it could just be any other song on the album for me, but with a longer running time. And get your drinks ready. Celtic Frost also encounter the same problem in the same year with 2 Megatherion on side B, but they end it with the avant-garde wonder of necromantical screams and bringing a French horn to shake things up. So this, I think they've got a formula. You already know it by track 3. By the time you get to track 8, I've got to say I'm zoning out by now. And as Dave said, if you compare it with the classics around this time, let's go back a year, Ride the Lightning, already a million years ahead of everybody else. Fantastic record. And I just think it gets a bit tedious by the time we get to track 8. Dave, what did you think of track 8, Black Death?
It was interesting because I listened to the songs in alphabetical order. This actually comes straight after Bestial Invasion. And my comment was, sounds exactly like Bestial Invasion, it's just a little bit more riff showboating. That was my commentary on it. It just, because they actually have a very similar tempo, very similar vibe. So you kind of go straight from one song into the next one. I was like, this could be like part 2 of the song. It's... So the problem is at this point when I was listening to it, I was like, it's thrash, and I've listened to a lot of thrash in my life, so I don't have that I'm 1985 and I've never heard anything like this before. What I've got going from my head listening to this, going, I've listened to loads of albums with loads of bands playing this and playing it just as well, but playing it in a much better production. So I was kind of like, all I could say was like they've done a really good job at what they're writing. And the only thing I had to do was when I finished listening to the album for like the 4th or 5th time, I went away from it and went, I need to understand the context of the album. So that's the key thing for this for me. Every time I had to go back, I was like, to me, I'm just going, I've heard loads of bands that have done it better. And then I looked at it and went, but a lot of those bands came a year or 2 years after this. So it's the fact that they influenced, or one of the bands that influenced these bands that learn. And so that's an impressive fact from that point of view, is these were an influential band on a lot of what we would class as the great thrash bands. It's just one of those ones that sometimes, as on a few of the tracks, I mean, not just the end track, but on a few of the others, I'm like, you almost want to shout at them and go, you don't need to put so many notes in. You don't have to hit the hi-hat so many bloody times. Just give yourself a bit of space in the song. You don't have to just try and be 200 beats a minute on a hi-hat. Just like, it's fine. Take a few hits out. Give some breathing room on it, because you're just going full on all the time. And as I said, getting 8 tracks through is tough on this album.
Go on, Andy.
Just last track.
Track 8, Black Death. By the way, one band that comes to mind who are influenced by this, Goat's Whore. If you've ever heard their albums, they're clearly influenced by this band. What do you think of Black Death, Andy? Because I know, is it one of the 5 where it could easily be your second favourite song?
Absolutely. I mean, credit to you, Dave, for listening to this 5 times. That's for an album that you probably don't like overall. That's really impressive.
It was tough.
I mean, I listened to this obviously dozens of times in my life. I listened to it a lot this last week or so. I don't think it seems overly long, and certainly 7.5 minutes for the closing track doesn't seem that long to me. I mean, the song structure is a little more unusual, which is something they carry forward into the next album. You know, Strong Lighting on Eternal Devastation. It's another fast one, so the fact that you followed it on from Bestial Event, I'm doing it now. Bestial Invasion is quite interesting, Dave. But unlike Antichrist and The Ritual, it is a sort of more of a pacier one. I mean, there's so many examples, but as we're talking about this track, this has got a great misheard lyric, misinterpreted lyric. I mean, the line is, rotting fingers, longing for flesh.
Yeah.
Now, I can hear it in my mind when I was younger, some of the lines are absolutely spot on and clear, and you can hear it, and you know the lyrics come across and the words come across. They managed to combine a familiar theme throughout the album, which is Satan and satanic.
I think to wrap it up, let's go through the last 2 points we always do. We'll start with which is stronger, side A or side B. I'll go first. The songs are shorter on side B, which suggests that we're running short of ideas by then. Side A edges it because side B has a couple of fillers. I agree with you. And the Thrash Attack, that's quite sedate, the first 1 minute of that as well, and it's an instrumental. And the song Antichrist, they have run out of ideas by the time we get to that. I just can't remember anything about it. It's track number 7. It's only 3 minutes and 44, but I can't distinguish it from anything else on there. For you, Dave, even though you listen, well, can you answer it because you did it in alphabetical order?
Okay. I wouldn't be able to either. To be honest, too many songs sounded pretty much the same to me all the way through, so I couldn't give you a positive.
Andy, side A or side B then?
So I'm gonna have to go with side A as well because you've got Thrash Attack on side B. So, and the 4 on side A are absolute bangers. The weakest of that is Tormentor for me, which has got a great title, but it doesn't live up to that. But The Ritual, Love Death Trap, Love Invincible Force, so side A.
Let's go for the verdicts. We'll have Dave in the middle because that's going to bring the average down. Andy, start with you. Verdict out of 10. And when we say has it stood the test of time, you can look at that from 2 perspectives. From 2025, or even from a legacy perspective, its influenced, or even putting yourself in the shoes of 1985. Was it really a groundbreaking album? So any of those criteria, score out of 10, please. And has it stood the test of time?
Near perfect, 9.5. And has it stood the test of time? It's hard to say. I think we've covered it in as much as, even myself, if I was introduced to that in recent years, it wouldn't do anything for me.
9.5 out of 10. Okay, Dave, are you just going to go in with a score? Go on, you've got to be honest if you hate it.
Well, I'm going to say, does it? I'm scoring it based on today rather than 1985.
Yeah.
Because I can't give it a score about 1985 because I just wouldn't know your comparison. And does it stand up today? No, it doesn't. Unfortunately, if you were to put this out today and compare it to anything, it just doesn't stand up because there is far too many good thrash bands that have come along that do it. Your grassroots thrash bands now play this sort of stuff and do it really well, so I couldn't say it stands up. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10.
Okay, yep. Okay, someone get the phone out. We're going to have to do a mean average.
So, I won't get the score.
Before I give the score, I'm going to look at it from 2 angles. 1, its influence, and then 2, yeah, if you were to listen to it today without the charm and the underdog spirit and what the Norwegian black metal scene think about it and how it's become this great record, not just of it in 1985 when Andy heard of it, but also its influence. From today's viewpoint, I'll give it a 7 out of 10. The production's not as bad as some of the other stuff from this era, like Sepultura, Voivod around this time. That is almost unlistenable, but still has its charm. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 for its impact as well in terms of influence. And there are too many times where we're comparing bands with early Megadeth, and we should be comparing them with Destruction. And this is better than Megadeth's debut album. It's not in the same league though as the next one, Peace Sells But Who's Buying by Megadeth in 1986. So my overall score then has got to be an 8 out of 10. So can someone calculate 9.5 plus 8 plus 3 divided by 3?
6.8. So we round up to 7.
7, okay, yeah. So it's because of Andy and I giving it a really high score. No, yeah, very, very impressed with it. It's not something I play all the time, but you can't deny its impact and deserves the title of a classic album, in my opinion.
There you go. Well, if you enjoyed our video today, please do like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you on the video sometime very soon. Take care.